Hi, everybody. Ladies, after you.
We can sit together.
Oh, isn't this nice?
Isn't this smart? This is great.
Oh, it's squishy as well.
Avoid the shoes, please.
This is a super posh tent. Yeah, what are your boots like today, Carol? Carol's famous for her muddy boots.
No, Rachel's got the boots
Yeah.
today, and I've got my blue suede shoes.
M&S, mine are.
Ever the groover.
M&S.
Ever the groover. Well, lovely. Hello, everybody. I must make sure we're not turning our back to everybody over there as well. Saga Magazine, I'm the gardening editor. I'm Lucy Hall, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today at this really special event for the Henley Literary Festival. It's a fascinating talk ahead. Girls, I think we're on for that. But really, you've joined us here with two of the best-loved gardeners in this land, and there's not much that these two ladies don't know about gardening. Oh, get you. But really, you've got such a lot of experience. And in fact, there's a lovely phrase, I don't know if anyone knows the phrase that we use in Saga Magazine, which is experience is everything. And I think what you've both brought to your new books and what we'll be discussing today is a lot of experiences which you've distilled. Now, I brought the books, and I'm hoping a few of you may have already seen these. If not, you can buy them over there, copies to be bought. So, two fantastic new books, and I'm delighted to have seen them both, read them both, love them. They genuinely are two of the books of the year. And so we'll be talking about these, but we'll be talking about more than just that. We'll be talking about the sort of experiences that you both have had through gardening. There's a lot, I think, in your past. So I should say, obviously, Carol has written her memoirs, long awaited, beautifully named Hortobiography.
Brilliant.
And
Good,
Rachel.
It's my husband's.
Did he come up with the
He
the
came
title?
up with it.
Did he?
Fantastic.
He's a talented man.
And my daughter Alice came up with The Grittiest Woman.
Ah, well, there's if anyone watches Gardener's World, you know how much grit Carol uses in her planting.
And it's completely untrue that I've got shares in a grit quarry. Just a rumour.
Monty Don put that rumour about. You can blame him. And of course, Rachel, you've poured years and certainly hours and hours and months of observation into this, experimentation and observation into this book, which really is a fantastic plea for nature to be in our gardens and to be a part of our gardens. And I know, Carol, that's a theme that's run through your whole life, actually. So there's lots that we'll be talking about around how gardening and nature meets. But also, I think, the very topical subject of how gardening and health interact. And I know that you've both talked very movingly about how that's helped you and how that's been a part of your lives. So I think we'll be exploring that as well. So we're going to be talking for about 45 minutes. You won't be left out. We would absolutely love to have your questions, and I'm sure you'll all have lots of burning questions to ask about the topics that we're covering today.
Yeah, but no slugs.
Yeah.
And nothing dead.
Yes, please.
All alive. But yes, so there's hopefully lots of very stimulating sort of thoughts and ideas coming. And so not only will you kind of want to get out and garden after this, but I think also probably ask, why do we garden? So I think there's quite big subject matters that we can talk about here. Wow. So no pressure, girls.
And a whole 3/4 of an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there we go. I'm popping that there. Let's jump in. So I want to really go right back to the beginning with you both and ask you, what was the moment that you realised you were a gardener? Carol, should we kick off with you?
Oh, I think we ought to start with you.
No, you start.
Don't argue
with
Lucy.
Lucy.
Before age, all right,
Don't
I
argue.
won't. I just always loved nature, right from the word go. I think everybody does. I think it's just something that perhaps, gets lost along the way. Same as your ability to draw or paint or create. Apparently, this is a quick preview. It first came to my mum's attention when I was born in 1945. Don't tell anybody.
I wasn't going to tell anyone.
Oh, okay.
Secret safe.
So it was just after VE Day, before VJ Day. Anyway, when I could walk, I used to bring buckets full of soil and empty them out on the lino. Do you remember lino?
Yeah.
You don't look like a lino crowd to me. And decorate it with flowers. So I think right from the word go,
Wow.
I was sort of into it. And then that first moment when your mum puts all these big fat nasturtium seeds in your hand, and you go out with her and she shows you how to poke your finger in the soil and drop a seed in. Yeah. And then collect seeds later on at the end of the summer.
Yes.
Yes, sorry, I'll shut up.
No. Rachel, tell us about your early start, because I know you're also from a gardening family.
Yes, my dad was a really keen gardener. He was an immigrant actually to the UK, but and was very fond of plants from the area that he'd grown up in as a child. But I think that it was just being surrounded by that, and my father was in the garden all the time. So we were just there. I've got 3 brothers. We were all out in the garden. And they were very keen on garden visiting and also on nurseries, going to nurseries. And well, it was nurseries in those days, talking about the 60s. And garden centres were just beginning. And in fact, I remember going to a chap called Mr. Rafferty, who was nearby. And you would go and you'd point to a shrub or something, baby shrub in the ground, and he would dig it up, wrap the root ball in newspaper, you took it home and planted it straight away, and that's how you bought your plants, wasn't it, back in those days? Yeah. And a little bit of propagation, but that I've sort of come to more and more. And yeah, I just feel that this is why I'm so passionate about starting off with your kids when they're very little. Not by asking them to do anything, but just being around with you, seeing that you love it.
Yeah. My dad hated gardening. No, really. Yeah, my mum loved it, but didn't get much chance to do it because she was too busy doing the job my dad should have been doing. But my dad wasn't keen on gardening, nature, art.
Yeah, so kind of all the things that he could see his daughter was passionate about.
So I suppose in your case, it's a question of having that sympathy within your family. And in mine, to an extent, it was just a reaction against...
You were just being difficult, just sort of saying, no, I'm not going to follow that.
I've always been awkward.
Well, it does say it's a gritty tale. So you've... Well, I mean, Carol, let's sort of go into a little bit more about your kind of start point. So, I mean, you've written in the memoir that gardening is a necessity for you. So what does it give you that other activities, other things in life don't give you? Where does that necessity come from?
Well, it's just the most marvellous sort of occupation, therapy, whatever you want to call it, because it, for a start, and this is why I think it's so important for kids too, you get the chance. You know, so much of our life now it's that's not me, is it?
Is it me?
We're all panicking.
Sorry. It's ruled by screens and, you know, it's all computers and things and all that stuff. And it's just wonderful to actually get the chance to create. I mean, when I'm propagating plants, growing new plants, I don't think I'm creating them. I'm helping them into life. But then when you get your plants and you start looking after them and arranging them, so it teaches you to nurture, it teaches you to...
Patience.
Being patient. Yeah. It's a all-round good thing. Yeah. And I think it's hugely important right now too, just as you stress in your book about pollinators and, you know, how vital it is to encourage them. Sorry, I'm not trying to steal your thunder. It's a wonderful book. It's brilliant. You've got to buy them both at the end.
Yeah. No pressure.
But I think it's hugely important now because through gardening and through, you know, having links, because gardens aren't nature. They're two separate things. But all your gardening has to abide by nature's rules. You get no choice. You plant your bulbs upside down and they won't grow. But at the same time, it just teaches you that you're part of it and how important it is, and that it's not just something that you're lucky enough to do, but in terms of the future of the planet, you know, your tiny little bit, if it's positive, then it helps. And if everybody does it, sadly, everybody can't garden. Yeah. And that's why I think community gardening and, ought to be a coming thing. I'd love to see the new government actually doing something about that. And education in schools too. Sorry.
No, listen, I know that's a topic you're passionate about, so we'll come on to that. But just wanted to sort of take you back to, your training as a teacher was obviously something that you're passionate about in terms of teaching, but you stopped teaching. You've always said you've never had a career plan, but in a way you've never stopped being a teacher, I feel. You've got a passion, haven't you, for sharing and being able to do that.
Well, you've probably noticed that I like talking, so,
Yeah.
And that's one excuse for doing it, isn't it? But yeah, it's lovely. I mean, I taught art, nothing where you had to read or write or anything like that. But yeah, that is that sort of communication, and I think Rachel's so brilliant. Have you seen? Has your second film in that gone? With
No,
Kat?
tonight.
Tonight, is it? Tonight,
Oh, God, as
tonight.
well. Yeah.
Did you see the first one? With
About pollinators.
It was one of the best things I have ever seen on Gardener's World.
It was one of the best things I've done because it was just, sorry, we're sort of jumping completely out of order, Lucia. But
It's all right.
No, you're not. 'Cause
Yeah,
you're talking about
it was
communicating.
just so interesting, and the people that I was talking to were so inspiring. And in fact, I've watched it back, and I continually say, "That's amazing, that's incredible," and it's a bit repetitive from me. But that's because it was, I mean, the whole sort of symbiosis between plant and pollinator and so on, it's just sort of extraordinary
And you
how it's evolved.
You worked with this lovely director,
Yeah.
Kath,
Yes.
who I know.
She's amazing.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you see
all
us, but you don't see all those
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
in the background.
Yeah.
And Kath, who was your director for that, I know she just did so much research.
So much. I mean, this is the thing, and I was the same with the book. You just go down a rabbit hole, and the more you discover, the more you want to know. And I was reading scientific papers that I knew I would never really need to do for this particular book. But it just sucks you in, the subject matter is so extraordinary.
And there's more to come.
There's more to come. There's 2 more to come. One tonight, one before the end of the series.
Well, you said about your book, so going on to your book, because Carol will come back to you, but moving on to your book, you've described it as it became an obsession.
Completely.
So what was the spark that first took you into saying, right, pollinators is the topic I'm going to focus on for now?
I mean, I think I'd always been interested, but in a more peripheral way.
Yeah.
And it was lockdown. So I had the opportunity, firstly, to be at home, because Carol knows as well, we're off in other people's gardens all the time. But, I always miss the irises because we're at Chelsea. I always miss. So it was having that opportunity actually to be in my own garden. And during lockdown, we grew lots of veg and so on, because you couldn't get tomato seeds for love nor money. And it was, that was the focus. The following year, I thought I'll use this space to grow cut flowers, and a lot of them were annuals, a lot of which were very attractive to pollinators. And it was so distinctive, the really dramatic change from one year to the next when I started putting in a wider range of flowers. And I thought, this is interesting, and I started photographing them and researching and so on, and then that led gradually to planting more and more, and the result is the book.
And what was it you were seeing? What was the spark? What were you observing?
Well, it was just, it's a walled garden, and I would walk in through the wall, and my husband had made all these lovely raised beds during lockdown, and you were sort of bombarded. I mean, the air things were just zipping back and forth, and if I'm deadheading, I'm negotiating the bees around here, and there's a butterfly there, and it was a really dramatic change, and it just, led me to want to know more and plant more specifically.
And the great thing about your book is there's a lot of rigor in there. There's such a lot of learning in there, but also you're making it very accessible.
Yeah.
So what are just to share with the audience here, what are some of the things that you've found can really work at home, particularly if anyone's got a small garden? Not always easy if you've got a small space.
No, it's not always easy, and I know I'm going to be repeating a lot of things that Carol will also sort of, add to. But it's very important to try and cover the year. So the book is a progression through the year, but it also acknowledges the fact that there are fewer pollinators on the wing during the winter. So that's a smaller section, and then it gets bigger through to the summer, and then sort of wanes again gradually through the autumn. The other important thing is a range of flower shapes, because different insects are sort of designed literally because the two things evolve alongside one another to be able to access nectar and pollen depending on tongue length is a very big thing, and this is something we talk about tonight on Gardener's World. So that's one thing. So you want sort of open daisy shapes, the heleniums, the rudbeckias and echinaceas and all that sort of thing. And you also want tubular flowers, things like salvias, foxgloves, and a range of colours, and also something, if you can find things that ideally flower for a long time, so you've got a lot of bang for your buck, and especially in a small garden where each plant really has to earn its keep.
Mm-hmm. And in many ways, a lot of these approaches are things that we probably used to learn from like our grandparents or our parents, and just, you know, Carol, coming back to you about your love of nature, all of this was almost instinctive in time. If when you had parents who were really fascinated by gardening, now clearly your mum was and your dad wasn't, but you had an upbringing, I guess, that so many kids today just are streets away from, can't have.
Yeah. Well,
don't have in that kind of approach, don't have that access to nature. What do you think we can do about that?
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Not at your question at all, but just at a memory. I think, I mean, we lived beside the A6, so there weren't a lot of wildflowers around.
Right.
But you used to notice whatever there were. And I used to teach my second big in West London, in White City, right behind the old
I know,
BBC.
near the old BBC.
Yeah. And in a big boys' school. I mean, it was a big school and there were big boys too. But
they looked up to you.
Oh, I don't know about that. But I used to take them a class at a time because, you know, you had because it was art, so it wasn't that important. But I used to take them to Kew Gardens, because we could go over ground. And it was when you put a penny in the slot. Can you remember that? You're not old enough,
I don't think
you?
I remember the pennies.
But you did, to go in. And it was before phones and stuff like that. So we used to have one school camera, and they used to take sketchbooks or at least, you know, bits of paper and something to lean on. And they'd draw, and then the next week and for weeks after that, we'd use that as the basis for their lessons. But I'm sorry, I've got to tell you this. So one day, we're sitting by the water lily lake, not the big Amazonian things under glass.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And one kid turned to me and he said, "Here, miss, ain't that Dean McGillicuddy and Mark Carter over there, rowing around in that boat?" And they'd pinch the boat that the gardeners used to go on. And there they were rowing around. And nothing I could do. I mean, I didn't even shout because I knew it was pointless. Just had to wait for them to come back. So yes, I mean, there are opportunities like that. Not for rowing, but for actually going out and looking. But even where I lived, I can remember finding coltsfoot coming up in February, March, up through concrete, you know.
Yeah.
And clever plant, you're talking about evolution. So, you know, eventually it has huge leaves, but the flowers come up first and provide very early pollen, I should think. And I can remember finding that and just finding it completely magical and waiting, because there was a chain-link fence in between me and that. It was in the Ministry of Pensions and National Insurance, where my dad worked at one time. But because it was early, you couldn't climb the fence while it was light, so you couldn't do it during the week, so you had to wait till the weekend and then over the fence, because I've always been
You
good
hopped over the fence?
I've always been good at climbing fences. But I've never been any good at sitting on them.
There are other tales of you climbing fences in your book, I know, from you breaking into Great Dixter, for instance. So Cow's got previous on this. Trespasser.
Yeah,
But
I've never been prosecuted.
Yet. But the fundamental thing there is that there you were in the middle of, well, you were in Bolton at that point. You're in a
between Bolton and Manchester.
You know, and here's nature around you, and you compare it to today, and where in our concrete cities can there be nature? So what do you both feel about how we can get more of the essence of gardening into cities at a time when we need more houses? Cities are expanding.
Yeah,
how
but
do we get that
They have
into?
to plan it into it because it's essential. And I feel that particularly strongly about new building of hospitals or hospices, or, I think that's absolutely essential. I think with a school, there has to be some sort of outdoor space that they can access somewhere locally.
Schools are hugely, hugely important in this, aren't they?
Definitely, because as you said, not everybody's got a garden, so you need somewhere that you can see plants growing, and you can ideally have some
And you
experience
can go
of
like
growing
that
it. Yeah,
and
just
actually put your hands
reconnect.
in the soil.
Reconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you're very, you've been very vocal in the last sort of few weeks, obviously on your tour and talks to everybody about the government and about gardening on the national curriculum. There's a lot of pressure on the national curriculum. What's your argument for putting gardening onto it?
Well, we've already made it, haven't we? Just to connect kids with the real world. And I don't mean you've got to enforce all these things like, it helps maths so you can count your cabbages. I don't mean that at all.
No,
it's just
I don't mean
that
that either.
direct physical and emotional contact that I think is hugely important.
Don't you think also you don't necessarily know the benefit of that? You might not know the benefit of it for 30, 40 years. But it is literally, it's getting that idea from very young, because invariably they come back to it at some point. And then, as we've experienced, it's almost a lifesaver later on. So without that sort of making that connection, I know lots of people, I know sort of people in family and friends who have no interest at all in plants and gardening and so on. And firstly, I don't understand it, but beyond that, I think, well, how... your life's sort of more impoverished because of it, and it can really become very important to your mental well-being as well as your health.
Yeah. You were talking about hospices and hospitals, and James Alexander Sinclair did a couple of things with me on this tour. So we were going to Shrewsbury, so we went to the
Horatio's.
The Horatio's
Horatio's
garden at
Maggie's,
Oswestry, because it was because he's on the board, isn't
Yes,
he?
he's on the board of
He's
everything.
on everything.
Everything,
But so we fitted John Massey's garden in first, and then there, and then
Lovely.
Wallerton in the middle.
I've been to
So we
John
had quite a
Massey's,
full
very
day. Have you ever been to Wallerton? If you're ever up that way.
Famous for its roses.
Oh, it's famous
There's
for
a rose,
everything.
isn't
It's
there,
just
called?
it's
Awesome,
just
awful.
the most. If you like herbaceous plants, just. But it's got everything anyway. Where was that?
But the
yes.
the Horatio's.
Yes. So it was just splendid to see how much it meant to the people there.
Yeah.
So everybody knows what Horatio's gardens are, don't they?
Possibly not. Why do you explain?
Well, I don't know all that much about them, but no, there are 11 of them. Somebody there does.
Ah,
You're a volunteer
Which one? Oh, brilliant.
at Salisbury.
The original, and Stanmore. So that's the original one was at Salisbury by a designer called Cleve West, and Stanmore was Tom Stewart Smith, who's very well known from Chelsea Flower Show. So they have amazing.
So there are 11
designers.
of them, aren't there?
Yeah.
And the whole point is they're attached to units which cater for people with spinal injuries. Isn't that right? I
Yes,
think I've
because
got it.
Horatio, named for Horatio, who was affected in that way.
Yeah, and there are many hospital gardens now. So not just at spinal units, but
Well, Maggie's is another.
yeah, I was going to say Maggie's is one, and more hospitals are experiencing kind of a Chelsea garden being brought to them. So some this year from Chelsea Flower Show this year went to a hospital in North London somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that coming in.
We did the first one of those. Well, honestly, I don't mean Horatio's gardens, nothing so worthy, but because when I exhibited, we were always in the marquee at Chelsea and everywhere. I met you there once, the very first time when you'd just been made editor of Gardener's World. Do you remember? It was quite a while ago.
It was a while ago.
But yeah, we did a garden outside, why am I telling you this? Oh yeah, And
Carol is known as the mistress of digression.
friend
A
Erica.
long old friend of our mutual friend dubbed Carol that, and by God,
Lovely
it was,
Erica
it was the
Huntington.
best. It was the best description ever. But Carol, digress away.
all right, so it was actually for Channel 4 because I was working for them then, so they sponsored it. So of course everything was done on the cheap. You know, we got tiny
In
budget
telly, everything is always done on the cheap.
It's all about
Yeah.
show, not behind.
Yeah.
But we donated our garden.
Yes.
It was the first time I think that had ever been done to the NSPCC. And it was a garden in Penge, and it was the in that place they prepared kids who were going to have to go to court. So it was both for kids who, you know, they'd dress people up as barristers so they weren't too frightened when they went in and all stuff like that.
Wow.
But the staff were marvellous, and I think it benefited both the staff and the kids who went there.
Yes.
It was,
Yeah.
it was a nice idea.
I mean, as we're on the topic, let's talk about it more. And as I said earlier, you've both talked very movingly about how your gardens. Carol,
Can I pinch
you have that. You have that. Almost were like a prescription for you at a point when you were both going through cancer treatment.
Yeah.
Can you sort of elaborate on that a bit more? You know, were you consciously taking yourself there in a very knowing, conscious way, or did this just seep in?
No, not at all sort of consciously. And I think this is really reinforces my point about if it's already there, that's wonderful because you're already tuned in. But my particular experience, I think, relates to while I was having chemo. And in the old days, chemo suites used to be sort of often underground because of the radiation. Now, this was a more modern building, and it was on, I think, the second or third floor. And I could see, though, you go in and there was sort of a chair and different little cubicle areas. And there was a beautiful big window behind the chair. And so I spent the first sort of half an hour asking if we could turn the chair round so that I could look out of the window. Yeah. And apparently that wasn't possible. It was sort of fixed to the floor and so on. But even so, just in the time when I was getting ready or arriving or leaving afterwards, I could see a tree from this window. And it accompanied me through those sessions. I went every week. And through that time, because when I started it was winter and the branches were bare, and then I followed it and it sort of went with me and came into leaf and then was in absolutely sort of full flow by the time I finished my treatment. And it was extraordinary. I've written about it a few times because afterwards I was writing about it and I thought, what was the tree? And realised I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember what kind of tree it was. It was just the tree. And it wasn't a London plane, I know, maybe a lime, maybe a sycamore, something like that. And it had become a kind of just for me, a barometer and a way of getting through that period. And my mother's just been in hospital having had a stroke this summer. And again, there was one small window and there was a tiny bit of a silver birch that you could just about see, and it wasn't great. But even she was saying, oh, look at the tree, look at the, she was able to sort of look at the leaves moving, in the breeze. And so these things are really deep-seated. They're fundamental to how we feel. And I feel it was as good a medicine as the chemo that I was getting, which incidentally, of course, comes from you. And so all those yew trees I've been looking after, finally it was coming back and looking after me, the taxus. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how you felt, but it was just absolutely intrinsic to getting better. And once, through that treatment and sort of being able to go outside and into my own garden, I'm not feeling great, but a little bit of deadheading, or sometimes just being outside, just having that change of view. And for a moment, you forget everything. You're in that moment, looking at that plant, and it is the best medicine. And interestingly, Macmillan, I don't know if anyone's got experience of them or their friends or family going through cancer treatment, but they produce a series of fantastic leaflets, and you go into the hospital and they're all there, and there's different things about approaches to treatment, and one of the leaflets is gardening with cancer, and there's nothing about stamp collecting or any other manner of hobbies and pastimes, only gardening. So I think everyone does recognise now that it should be singled out as something very special.
Yeah. Perhaps not singled out, perhaps just spread around everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carol, what's your experience? Because you've obviously gone through this more recently and been quite open with everybody through Instagram and so on. And,
Yeah.
but share your thoughts about how the garden...
Well, I was fortunate enough not to have any kind of sort of further therapy at all. They just whisked the two of them off. I took selfies first.
I did too.
Did you? Just
before
to
my
remind
surgery?
you? Yeah.
I did too, yeah. Which my husband thought was very, very
Did
odd.
he?
Yes.
Oh, my husband cheered.
Did he take the photos?
Sorry. But no, so really, physically, once they'd done that, I mean, it only took me a few weeks. And then they decided, because the diagnosis on this side had been pre-cancer, and then they decided it was cancer, so they had to take my sentinel nodes out on the other side too. But I got over that literally in a week or so. And I'm sure it was with the help of gardening, but there was one really lovely thing, that on my house, my little cottage, there's a Banksian rose, so it's a hugely inappropriate rose to plant in a place like that. you need a manor house and a great big wall. But because I liked it, I planted it.
Yeah.
And it's now, in fact, I noticed the other day, in fact, yesterday, when I overslept and we were filming in the garden, and I wanted to shout down to them and tell them that I was awake. I couldn't, because this rose has put all this new growth out right across. But when it was lovely because it was in flower, because it flowers early, because I think I had it in the thing in April, so I was just getting better, and there were flowers there. And then I was researching it because I wanted to find out when it was introduced. And I found out that in Chinese medicine, it's actually used to heal wounds and replace tissue. Don't you think it's phenomenal, that?
Wow.
But I mean, I didn't do any of that. I didn't make any tea or anything, but just psychologically,
Yes.
that was a thing. There it was growing. And like you said, it was wonderful, that sort of timing. I know it was hard, but the timing couldn't have been better, could it?
It really was
as you
wonderful.
got to the...
Yes. I would say if it had been the other way and it had been summer and then going through autumn and into winter, it might have felt a bit... So it was lovely that it was coming into leaf.
A bit less uplifting. But I guess it's because I mean, you said yourself, Rachel, it's deep-rooted. This is our deep-rooted connection back to the seasons, that it's terribly easy now to not live with the seasons, isn't it? If you don't have a garden or don't have access to a park or a community garden, it's quite easy in a city to not have that kind of seasonal connection. And I guess that's what it's taking me back to.
I don't know about that. I mean, I just think, we used to live in Ladbroke Grove, and the street next to ours, there were cherry trees.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody in London, and even in cities like Manchester, is all that far away from something green. And I mean, whatever mess we make of the world, eventually it's going to heal itself.
Exactly. It'll
when we're long gone. It's always there. It's always in the background. I think it's just great to increase it, and as you were saying, and to alert people to it, especially children.
And to bring it from the background to the foreground.
Yeah.
I think is probably what's the step that's needed.
Yeah, exactly. Telly helps.
Sorry?
Telly helps.
Telly does
Magazines help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're championing it helps, and you're lobbying and so on. But so it's not just health, obviously. It's let's go on into talking about climate change, because gardening has potentially a significant role to play for there. I mean, obviously, this is very much a plea for nature within your book.
Yeah.
You've talked a little bit about things that people can do, but is gardening, do you think, taken seriously enough in the kind of push or the challenges of climate change?
I think there has been a sea change. And actually, just going back to what we were saying about the seasonality, it drives me crackers when I want to buy flowers and send flowers to someone, and you find, roses in January and tulips in December or whatever it is.
Because
now there is a fantastic organisation called Flowers from the Farm, which is promoting British seasonal homegrown flowers, and fantastic. And you get the most beautiful arrangements that are in season. So that was just one thing. And I'm digressing now. What were
No,
we
but
saying?
you don't need them because you've got all those gorgeous dahlias and all those beautiful
I know, but I won't
flowers in
have
your-
them in February.
No, true.
So but there'll be something else that's beautiful. So I think that's really important. And just sort of in a broader sense about the climate thing, again, I think that generationally we are improving. So my dad, who, as I said, would have considered himself a really knowledgeable gardener, really keen, loved nature, and we went on walks and stuff all the time. But he sprayed everything that moved, as everybody did in the 60s and 70s, and nobody questioned
Apart
it.
from, yeah.
It's just what you did. In the same way that you sort of bent daffodil leaves over double and tied them in a nice
Tied them
little
up.
neat. Do you remember
Everybody
that?
but, yes, I do. But everybody but Jeff Hamilton, I was going to say.
Well,
I
you
mean,
see, he was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, he really was, I don't mean he was a one-man responsible, but he was the one who's, you know, before he started talking about organic gardening, you'd have to wear a jalaba and a pair of sandals and a headband, wouldn't you, to have thought
dad
about
didn't
it in
look like
that
that
way.
way.
No, but that's what I mean, yeah.
And
Yeah.
for anyone
You're
who
right,
do-
you were thought a bit weird. It's like
Yeah.
the king, when he was sort of talking about organic gardening and talking to plants and that sort of thing, and everyone thought he was all a bit odd. But now everyone's, you know, actually he was also ahead of thinking at that time.
I think it's difficult, though, isn't it, for people to think that the steps or actions in one garden can make a difference. But I know you're both passionate about sharing, that actually if we all collectively garden more.
Yeah, but that's the point, isn't it? The more you spread the word, the more you get people involved, especially from an early age, then it becomes part of the overall political and social consciousness. And that's what's happened. When I first started selling plants about, when was it? I don't know. I ran a nursery for about 30 years. But the first time we went to the Birmingham show, you know, it was a brand new thing. And people there in the Midlands really hadn't had a flower show before that. They might have had little local ones on the outskirts. But people who came in, you know, everybody wanted something that was in flower. Well, I went to that show selling plants for the next 15 or so years, and you could actually see the difference in people's attitude. You know, at first, I actually wouldn't sell plants to a couple of people when they told me what conditions they got and I knew things wouldn't do. But
So prescriptive.
Yeah, but good.
Yeah, but
no,
honest.
sure.
But eventually, you know, gradually, the same people would come back, and you knew that they knew a bit more and they wanted to find out a bit more, and that now people actually ask about the provenance of plants, where they come from. That's why I'm so sad to see that flower shows are on the down.
Yes, I mean, I think Karen and I both know incredible specialist nurserymen and women who have retired over the last 4 or 5 years and are still continuing to do so. And sadly, there's not always someone who's willing or able to take over the nursery, because it's a slog, it's a lot of work, and nobody gets rich on having a nursery. So I think, yes, we
my
are.
shoelaces.
We are, well, there we go. But we are aware of that, you know, when we're filming at the shows, that it gets a bit thinner. So I want to put that plea out to younger people to say this is a great way of life. And it's important that we do, you know, make these plants, this wide range of plants available to people.
Well, now, even when there are specialist nursery women and men, you tend to see that they get taken over by bigger firms. They'll sell directly to them, and then they'll mail order, because that's the way of the world.
Yeah. Well, I suppose mail order, I mean, it can be good, and I do order plants on, I mean, although I prefer to see the plant, because, you know, as you know, one of them will just be right.
You like
feel
turning
right.
it out
turn
of the
it,
pot,
yes,
don't
exactly,
you?
have a look at
Have
it.
a look at the roots.
That's very true. But most of the nurseries do send out, you know, they package really well and it arrives, you know, very nicely and so on. But it's just not the same. Not quite.
Because fundamentally gardening is tactile, isn't it? Gardening is about having
Sensory,
your fingers.
isn't
It's
it?
sensory.
As Monty would say, it's visceral.
Yes.
Yes. I think
Marvellous.
He would
Thank,
say
thank you
his
for
words,
bringing a little
without
bit
a
of
doubt.
intellectual
Bit of
rigour
Monty.
to the conversation. Well, now we've reached about 1:15, and I did say earlier that we would be opening the floor to questions. And so I'm wondering if the audience would like to join us at this point and come up with some questions. We've got a couple of roving mics. There's one hand up there already. That's brilliant. And we've got another roving mic over here. So once the mic reaches you and it's there, fire away.
Hello, Rachel and Carol. I think I contacted you both about the yellow-legged Asian hornet, and I was wondering whether either of you have actually come across it.
How
yet.
did you contact us? Just
I wrote to your publishers and sent Carol a letter.
have you heard anything? I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
well,
I don't think
never
it
mind.
reached me.
All
I
right,
do
well, never mind.
apologise.
But have either of you come across the yellow-legged Asian hornet yet? Because
I don't.
I'm a member of Goring Green Fingers Gardening Club. And
Have you?
No, but the lady who talked to us about it was saying that basically they could annihilate all the pollinators in the UK. They're not only interested in honeybees,
Yes.
they will take all the pollinators, and this
They're
is
not
an-
fussy.
No.
Yeah, so I mean,
And,
it's, so that-
and they can basically destroy the all of the pollinators.
And
in
what
the
did
UK.
the lady who talked to you about this, what was she suggesting was the solution?
Well, first of all, making people aware of it, and I was wondering if you could talk to the producers of Garden as well to do a segment on
That's
it,
a good
and maybe
idea.
in Saga magazine as well,
Yeah.
because this is
It is
really, really serious.
Wasn't it a storyline on the Archers?
Somebody.
Yeah, somebody
Yes,
said
yeah.
that.
It's a
Yes,
great point,
it was.
and you know, Asian hornets coming into the UK. It's a matter of globalisation.
Yeah.
We're buying plants, we buy products. So great point to make. Thanks very much. We'll
That
keep an eye
lady
on-
there has...
So lovely. Let's
Have you-
So if we could just get the microphone across to. So just so that everybody in the hall can hear you, if we can get the microphone.
There was an item on the television about this the other day.
With an
On what
item on the
programme?
television.
Sorry.
I can't remember the programme, sorry. But
Right.
they found this nest.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking. Yes. So if you could talk with the microphone, and then we can all hear
I
you.
was just going to say there was an item about it on the television the
yeah.
other day, and I think they've got groups of people who are doing watches for them.
That's it.
Yes.
I think they're
yes.
coming in from. I think they're in Kent at the moment.
They're certainly coming through
Yes.
the south
so
of England.
there was
and
there was
they-
something definitely
terrifying.
about it on,
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
television the other day.
It's
Yeah,
great, it's
so
great,
in,
that's a
in,
great
an,
topic.
in any of those items,
Yeah.
what were people suggesting was the solution?
Well, unfortunately,
You
the
report-
solution
you
actually is
report it.
annihilating. Is you report it exactly,
Yes.
and the nests at the moment are being destroyed.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the threat, but
Yeah.
they may get a point where it becomes too prevalent. But at the moment, it's
Yeah.
it's pre-tipping point. But great point. I'm going to have to move on, but thank you. It's a really good point.
An app.
Can we-
Thank you.
Thanks.
And the
I'll
app.
look it
Good
up.
point.
Thank you.
Now, did I see a hand up over? Certainly a hand up over here, lady down at the front. If we could just get the microphone down there, great. Thank you.
Rachel, can I just ask you? I've read your book and note that you've had the illustrations done by your daughter. What
Yes.
process and collaboration was that like?
Yes, I mean that was extraordinary. So my daughter
Good
is, properly trained after she went to Central St Martin's. She did something completely different, but her degree show was based on ginkgo leaves. So I thought, it's there. And sure enough, she sort of couldn't pull herself away and is now a botanical artist. And she works on vellum, which is a very sort of ancient technique and very, very slow and painstaking, where you build up the pigment gradually. And so you have to move the pigment around differently, I believe. Sitting next to an art teacher.
Never painted on vellum.
It is quite a sort of specialised thing. And when I was approached about the book, and I'd been wanting to do something along these lines for a while, we discussed how it would be illustrated and so on, and wanted photographs, but I suggested having illustrations as well. and the publisher was very anti, very sort of not on board at all, and I really had to work on them to bring them round. And I'm so glad I did, because she turned out not only to be good at the flowers, but she's a dab hand. Have you got the end pages?
Oh,
the
yes.
End papers?
Here we go.
She turned out to be a dab hand at the insects as well. And so I had them, they crawl across the page and that sort of thing. And I kept saying, can we just have one more thing? And can we have some hoverflies here? And can we have... It was very difficult. It was also difficult because she had a baby during producing these, and she gets that morning sickness every day, all the way through the pregnancy. So yes, we had to cut down autumn because we had planned for her to do more illustrations, so it's a bit thin in parts of the book, but on the whole,
absolutely beautiful though.
Yeah, and both of us are completely obsessed. We both have our sort of bottoms in the air the whole time while we're photographing, or something, or she's trying to capture a red mason bee or whatever it is. And she's very good at insect identification, much better than me. Now.
And you've also got the addition of Jonathan Buckley's
Jonathan's
beautiful
amazing, and
photographs.
he's fantastic to work
He's
with.
the best.
And he will, won't he? He'll sort of wait with one dahlia for 4 hours to get exactly the right shot. So yeah,
and he's
I'm
also
so lucky
lovely
with that. He's
He is.
gorgeous.
We can all testify to that.
They're both lovely.
He did that. That's his.
Was that his?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does
Gorgeous.
the nicest portraits because he doesn't make you feel uncomfortable or awkward, or you can just be yourself, and he snaps away. And,
Say two of the most experienced presenters that we have, but you're good in front of a camera. So now, who else has got a question? Here we go, down here.
Can I have your opinions on peat-free compost, please? We haven't commercial peat-free composts. We haven't found one that we like.
No,
You
I think people are still practicing.
Yeah.
I think, all these big firms must have just been, even though they knew it was coming, they just haven't had
They were in
time
denial,
to
weren't they?
refine it. And I've had some lousy compost, and I'm sure lots of people have too. And it's horribly disappointing because, I'm always going on about
because you
everybody
want to
growing
do
their own
that, don't
stuff.
you? You
Yeah.
want to do
Yeah.
it.
But you've got to do it. I think we'll find it'll get better. But
Yeah.
what I want to see is on the outside, and I always have, and it's never ever been done. Just like food,
Yep.
I want to see the contents of what's in there. So I think it's up to people like Lucy who are writing for Saga, people like us who are going
yes,
on,
yes.
just to make
Yeah.
as much fuss as we can.
Exactly.
It's
We need to put the pressure on, don't we? Because if we collectively all demand the product, they will find a way to get there. They've just been very slow getting going with it.
I think they're anxious to, because they don't want they don't want their stuff to have a bad reputation. They want people to be successful with it. Yeah. It's a difficult sort of equation though when you think about where it's going to come from. About green waste and just how much of that there could be, and whether it's going to be enough to actually satisfy
demand.
Yeah.
Indeed. Where are you both on, making your own compost to at least add? I don't know whether you make your own compost or it's difficult to do if you haven't got a great amount of space. But
it's no good if you're starting seeds, because compost is your own compost is terrific. Put onto the garden, let the worms take it down, let the microorganisms get to work, and your soil's alive. But you try and sow seed into it, and it's full of pathogens. Yeah. Which can't be dispelled in dissipated, whatever. Anyway, dispersed. One of those words in a seed tray or a pot. Yeah. So you really got no choice than to use commercial stuff.
Yes, and I'm finding some brands are better than others, and maybe I better not sort of say here, but I
don't think you should.
It's difficult because
but
they
it's
all
expensive. The good ones are a lot of money, I think.
But then you can look at that and say, actually, you're then producing a lot of seeds and a lot of plants. I mean,
that's true.
That's something that you both advocate. Sowing seeds and
100%.
growing your own garden, and
so
you can
much
save
fun.
a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Our can I do a bit of advertising for Gardeners
Go
World?
on. Yeah.
But no, we've been doing plants for free
Yep.
all year. And that's what we were filming our last one yesterday. And I wanted to call it Grow Your Own Garden, but Sharon wouldn't have that
Why wouldn't she have that?
because I wrote a book by the same name.
You get all the in-house
We're not
gossip
allowed
here.
to. Yeah.
So it's plants for free.
Don't worry, what's said in the room stays in the room.
Yeah, I only shared with a couple of hundred people. But no, I think that's the way forward. I think you don't just advocate growing your own plants because it's a nice thing to do, but it is the way forward. You know, and it's self-perpetuating. You know, yesterday we were collecting seed, and it was just so lovely. We started in the spring with sowing seed, and it's just so lovely to see that whole cycle. But we do need some proper compost in between.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Keep writing to them.
Yes, great
Lobby.
question. And I
Lobby.
do think it's improving. But as Rachel's been saying,
We do have a question from one of our online audience members.
Lovely. Should we take that? Voice
This comes
of
from
God.
Joy. Joy says, if you can only have 3 beneficial plants in your gardens, what would they be and why?
Ooh, desert island plants.
Oh, it's like that favourite child question, isn't it?
Don't worry, your children aren't here either, so you can tell us.
Yeah. So we're thinking 4 pollinators, I suppose.
So beneficial.
Possibly.
So obviously something that,
Beneficial.
I mean, most plants are beneficial, but you
Yeah.
interpret how you would like.
Yes. Well, I mean, I suppose for pollinators, you know, something that goes on a long time and different flower shapes and so on. So you'd have to have some sort of daisy, maybe a rigeron, which just sort of puts itself in only little sort of cracks and in the paving and everywhere that you don't want it, but looks lovely, and that sort of flowers and flowers and flowers and flowers and flowers and comes back the next year and easy peasy.
Or a calendula for the
Or a
same
calendula.
purpose.
Yeah, same
Easy,
thing.
lots of
Self-seeds as
seed.
well. Yeah, that's another good one. And then something like Verbena bonariensis, and I know we all, you know, perhaps it's become a bit ubiquitous and we all talk about it a lot, but for butterflies and so on, I mean, you could have buddleia as well.
And it's seeds.
And it moves itself around the garden, doesn't it? So you think you've got it somewhere, and then it's moved itself somewhere else.
And
Usually-
and have you seen on telly programmes people actually propagating it
I
from
know.
cuttings?
I know.
Why?
Totally, yes.
Yeah.
Buy it once, you've got it forever.
Yeah. It usually pops up where you least expect it.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So.
And something early, sweet rocket or something like that.
Yes, something like that, or yeah.
Hellebore?
Hellebores are good.
Hellebores, yeah, for the winter, and
Snowdrops,
snowdrops for those
crocus.
few queen bees that are around at that time.
Exactly.
But I think things in that early spring, we were collecting seed
Aconite.
yesterday from Perennial Honesty,
Yes,
Lunaria
Lunaria,
rediviva.
that's wonderful.
with
The
these
lovely big papery.
Yeah,
It's in
but
the book.
Elliptical seed pods, and it's a perennial.
Yeah.
But whether you're growing that or the annual Lunaria annua,
I've got the annual.
they're both terrific plants because they flower early and there's lots of flower, and also something for moths, something that's night scented, you know. I don't know, honeysuckle or one of
Something
those
I mean, that
phlox.
For the back end of the year, so obviously snowdrops, aconites for the start of the hellebores for the start of the year. What about the sort of late
Again,
arrival at the party?
Again, any of the sort of late autumn flowering perennials, so salvias and heleniums,
and
Rebecchias.
Rebecchias are just
Rebecchias
everywhere
really
at the
good.
moment, aren't they?
Yeah,
there's our six.
and
Just
the
the best
asters
thing,
that we
don't
can't
they,
call
just
asters anymore. you know.
Yeah,
What do we-
Symphys.
yeah, that's the
Symphotrichum.
word.
So we have a question
Sorry.
over here.
I beg your pardon.
First of all, may I just say that you both look absolutely great, so it's great to see you looking good. May I
Thank
just
you.
ask you, if you could only do one job in the next 2 weeks, apart from enjoying your garden, what would that job be that you would do in the garden right now?
Try and push some of my enormous grasses to the sides of the paths so that we can actually walk down there without pushing them out. And no, really seriously, deadheading wherever possible, because still, Harry Cosmos, mine are struggling,
Yeah.
but they're still there.
They are still there. The dahlias too, still
Yeah.
coming.
Just to carry on with that, especially with these single flowers, which are great for pollinators. I think that's really important. And just turning my compost heap one last time. It's
Planting as well, it's a good time while the soil's still warm.
I can't see
Get
any
some
soil.
things in. Well,
But
that's because you've overdone it.
yeah,
You've overreached yourself.
That can be a problem in the autumn, finding space for planting. But
That is true.
I know that Kew Gardens have done a lot of trials to say that autumn planted, particularly woody plants, is the best time to do it. So at least planning for planting, even if you can't actually get anything in the ground
get
right
into
now.
it.
But that's a great
and
question.
taking lots of photographs to remind yourself of just what it's like, just how, in my case, overgrown it is. So I can see, what I need to do, really.
Brilliant. And we've got time for just one more question, and I
Which
think
is
we've got
somebody-
it over here. Hello.
Hi there, thank you so much for talking so brilliantly this afternoon or this morning. My colleague and I are both teachers in a primary school in Marlow, and we've both run a gardening club, and we're desperate to do more of it, but we're just so restricted by what we've got to also make time for. We rely heavily on volunteers, like the people from our church and people from the community. But we've also seen firsthand how children with SEND, and there's so many more children with SEND in our schools, benefit from just being out there and, like you say, Carol, just touching the soil, watching things grow, and the behaviour is improving, but we just don't have the capacity to do it. It's a bit emotional because it's just, we can't really...
No,
Yes,
well,
the will is
that's
there.
why we've
Yes.
all got to try and make sure that it's on the syllabus,
And
that
if you
it's
can use,
recognised.
if you can use your platform to just be our voice, and a cheeky request if there's anyone
Don't cry,
here.
you'll set us all off.
We would rather be in the garden with the children all day, every day,
Yes.
but we just can't.
No,
and
but-
if there's anyone
but
here that could come and help us, local, then that would be
Oh.
amazing.
Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you very, very
Absolutely.
much
And caring
from all
about
of
it.
us. Yeah.
And I'm sure from all the parents too, to
Yeah.
just put those kids in connection with soil.
Exactly.
There's nothing better as a start point. So thank you.
Yes.
Really, thank you. So,
Yeah.
and actually for everybody doing that, everyone in community gardens and schools, it's a brilliant bit of outreach, and it's a brilliant way to get people into gardening who maybe don't have the opportunity normally. So we're at the end. We've reached our hour already. Oh, which school?
Yes.
St. Peter's in Marlow. Brilliant. Put the word out, folks. St. Peter's. Be careful what you've asked for, but share back. Let us know how it goes. Send us pictures. So I just really wanted to say thank you so much for being, what a really engaged audience. Absolutely brilliant. Really, thank you so much for coming. But most of all, please put your hands together for this amazing ladies.
And for Lucy.
And Lucy.
Rachel.
And Lucy, thank you.